Reginald Scott here, and welcome to part 2 of bike maintenance tools for the home mechanic and small business. You've made it this far. I'm very proud of you. If you have actually indeed watched part 1 already. If you haven't watched part 1, please go back and watch it, because there's a lot of stuff in there that's not included in this video. This video is more advanced tools, and you're going to need to start with that video for your collection of tools first. And also, you may have questions that are not answered in this video, which have already been answered in part 1. So please, I encourage you, if you haven't seen part 1, to watch that either after this or before this, so that you have the full picture before you ask a question that's already been answered. But if you've watched part 1 and you then proceed to watch part 2, and I still haven't answered a question or shown you something that you want to see and you want to know about it, stick it in the comments below and we'll try and solve that issue directly between you and I. So yeah, this is tools basically for, we're getting into really serious home mechanic stuff now, where you are literally doing almost every job or every conceivable job to your bike yourself. You're perhaps even building bikes up from scratch, and this can also lead into the territory of what I do, which is a small bike business where I service other people's bikes. So obviously having the tools is only part of that. The knowledge and the experience and the technique and some level of inherent skill is also valuable, but these are the kind of tools that you're going to need if you really want to get serious about bike maintenance. So that being said, let's go have a look at those tools. So this is definitely in the realms of more professional and more serious bike mechanic tooling here. This is a derailleur hanger straightening tool. This one has been more than good enough for me for absolutely years. So there you go. You don't need to buy expensive. If maybe if one is on sale, go and get it. But again, unless you're bending your hanger on a regular basis, it's just not something you need. If you're doing it for a business, then you do need one, because you're going to get more customers coming in who have bent their hanger than an individual. Right, moving on. Cutters for cables. Now, you can just use normal pliers and things to cut your cables, but having a proper set of cable cutters is going to make your life much easier, and it's going to give you a cleaner cut. Again, the ones that I have here are a really nice brand. These ones and these ones, these are more of the German ones again, Knipex. And they are very, very hardened cutters, and they cut very, very cleanly. If you are going to invest in something like this, and you are going to be getting serious about working on your bike at home, I do recommend getting a pair of high quality cable cutters, so that you do get nice clean cuts of both the housing and the cable. It's really essential for doing a good job. So there you go. And that is, as I say, primarily for cabling bicycles. If you're going to be doing any bottom bracket work, or some types of wheel hubs out there require the removal of a C-ring, C-clip, circlip, whatever you want to call it. It's basically a split ring with 2 small holes in it, and you need one of these kind of tools. It's specifically designed for fitting into between those holes and squeezing them or pulling them apart to allow you to remove them from a bicycle. So they are a little bit more advanced, these ones. This says it's a Stanley. But I don't think it is. So yeah, a little bit more advanced, a little bit less necessary. Specifically, BB30 requires these. Some DT Swiss hub internals require these. Some Fulcrum hub internals require these. Other brands as well. So again, if you are going to get serious, these are more advanced tools. And then a very specific bicycle tool for cabling is this one, which is a cable tensioner. Initially, when I bought this tool, I didn't use it at all because I couldn't find any serious use for it. I found a pair of needle nose pliers could do the job almost as well, and it was faster to keep the needle nose pliers in my hand all the time rather than reach for this. However, there are some cabling jobs on some older bikes where this is useful. Generally speaking though, if you're a home mechanic and you're only doing this part-time or only doing this as a hobby, you probably don't need a set of these. A needle nose plier or a plier will do this job. This is just a little bit easier. It just gives you a little bit more freedom to take your hands off things when you're tightening stuff, because it locks in position and it preloads the tension on that cable to allow you to adjust and cut it. So there you go. Not an essential tool, but something that you might find useful if you want to do this professionally or if you're really, really serious. So another set of tools which is a little bit more advanced but very necessary if you're serious about bicycle maintenance is measuring equipment. Okay, so even having just a basic ruler is pretty important, because you're going to need to measure things for replacements. When you wear out a headset or a bearing, or need to get new spokes for your wheels for whatever reason, it's really important to have a good measuring stick. And this one from Part Tools is pretty good. This one does a variety of jobs. Not only does this have holes for measuring spokes, so you hook the spokes in here and it tells you how long the spokes are, but it also has holes for measuring loose bearings or loose ball bearings. I like this. This is a cheap set of calipers that I got in a Japanese store, so like department store kind of thing. And I use this all the time. Every time I see a tire that needs measuring, or a bottom bracket or anything like that, I go for these, because they're plastic, they're soft, they don't do any damage. They give me a pretty accurate idea of the size of something. And usually if I roughly know the size of it, then I know what it is. So a pair of simple calipers like these is very useful and not very expensive. If you want to spend a bit more money, you can go for a Bosch set of calipers like this. These give you, of course, a much more accurate reading, but I rarely use these because I don't need to get something quite so accurate anymore. These are more useful to me in my previous employment. Unfortunately, the screen is cracked, but it does still work. Moving on. If you're going to do a lot of jobs on your bike, you're going to need some way of holding parts in place or holding equipment in place, and a good vise is pretty essential. Now, I, in my time here in Brunei, that's about 6 years now, have gotten through 4 vices. I think it's 4? No, 3 vices. This is my 3rd one. The previous 2 were cheap vices made in China, and they broke. I literally, putting DT Swiss wheels in the top of them, with the DT Swiss tool for opening up the the star ratchet ring, requires an immense amount of torque. And by putting the tool in the vices, they were smaller than this one, and they were just cast iron vices, and I just broke them. I absolutely broke them. I snapped the vices in half. Shows you how much torque was put on them. And I think they were like $80 or $90 worth of vice each one. This one was a lot more. I think this was closer to $300. It's a, what do they call it? It's an Olympia vise. And what I like about it is that, number one, it's a lot sturdier and stronger. What I like about it is that it's adjustable. So you can actually open these here and spin the vise around. So much so, in fact, that I ended up having to put pins in it, which I've drilled into the vise and placed, so that the vise doesn't twist on its own, because sometimes when I'm talking on it, the vise wants to rotate. So I've had to pin the vise in order to prevent it from moving, even when these things were tightened down. But apart from that, it's great. And obviously you need somewhere to put that vise, and a good desk or workshop bench is also useful. Torque wrench. Here's the essential one. This is actually a Lifeline essential torque wrench. I've had this for, well, years and years and years. And it's great. It does the job perfectly well. I have nicer torque wrenches, which I actually sell in the shop, and I dream and covet having one of those torque wrenches. But this one refuses to die. It keeps on going, and it keeps on doing the job really, really well. And so I have not been able to treat myself to a new torque wrench as a result. Do you need to buy an expensive torque wrench? No. As I say, a cheap one like this, I think this was like £30 or something. Comes with all the bits. As you can see, the bits are actually different colors because I have changed the bits. You need to change the bits if you're doing a lot of work on your bike to make sure you don't round things off. So as soon as I start to see one of my bits get worn, I change it. See this one? Starting to get a bit worn, starting to get a bit rounded on those corners. You have to start thinking about changing them. These are relatively inexpensive and you can buy them lots of different places. Any local hardware store should stock these. So make sure you keep fresh sockets in your set before you do something a mischief. All right, the small torque wrench I would say is good enough for anyone working on a Shimano bike. So if you've got Shimano cranks like Ultegra 105, you know, Dura-Ace, blah blah blah, all you need is one of these. This one is up to a maximum of 21, I think it is, or 24 Newton meters. That is more than enough you will need for any Shimano setup. That will do your headset, that will do your saddle, that will do your seat post, that will do your crank. Pretty much that will cover everything. If you have a bicycle that uses SRAM or FSA or a rotor or other such things, you may need a bigger torque wrench. This is a nice Japanese torque wrench that I bought. It's a big boy. It's actually really useful as a breaker bar in a way, you know, trying to open things up, or a cheetah bar, because it's got such a nice long arm to it. I can get a lot of force on this to really get that max torque on there. This one goes from 28 all the way up to 210 Newton meters. So this is a real big boy. This one is actually designed for doing car wheels, but I bought it for bicycle maintenance and I also use it on my car as well. Don't forget to wind off the springs when you're done with your torque wrench so that you don't wear out the spring. It's also a good idea to get an adapter so you can put different heads on your torque wrench. Like I say, if you're super serious, you'll need one of these. If you're just playing, you're just doing it on your one bike at home that you use to go to work or something, and it's a Shimano bike, all you need is this. If you're getting super serious, you need a big boy. Right, moving on. So now we're moving on to the realm of bearing presses. This is one of the quintessential tools of the bicycle mechanic, and it's something that if I was building a coat of arms for the bicycle mechanic, I would include in the coat of arms. Bearing presses come in a variety of sizes. So this is what they call a small bearing press. This is designed for predominantly for wheel bearings. This one is a medium-sized bearing press, and I tend to use this one for bottom brackets. And then this one is for headsets because it is very, very big and long. Do you need all of these? If you want to have a proper mechanic shop at home, or you want to do this as a small business, you do need all of these. But if you're just doing your own bicycle at home, you could probably get away with something like this. This will do both wheel bearings and bottom brackets, although I would warn you that wheel bearing servicing is a lot more difficult than bottom bracket bearing servicing in my opinion, and it does require a lot more skill to do, you know, to do wheel servicing. So if you don't feel confident to do that, just buy a cheap bearing press for your bottom bracket. This one is a cheap bearing press, it's a Lifeline one, and it's been fantastic. This does all the major bottom bracket sizes, presses them in absolutely no trouble. It's been a lovely tool to use, and it's worked absolutely fine. No quality issues with it at all. It's cheap and it does the job. This one over here is a part tool one. This is quite expensive. I use this one the least. I only use this one when I'm building bikes up from scratch. I bought it because I was building a lot of light speed bikes and pressing headsets into those. But it's not as essential as the bearing press for your bottom bracket. And then this one is a beautiful tool. This one is from wheelsmanufacturing.com or Wheels Manufacturing Incorporated. It's beautiful stuff. They make delightful tools that are very high quality, and I really love this press. It's actually my pride and joy. This is the nicest tool that I own, and it was a gift from my father, and I really, really appreciate it. It's just lovely. The drifts on it are absolutely beautiful, and yeah, It's got every kind of conceivable bearing size for wheels on it. Almost every conceivable size. You will eventually find something that you don't have, but yeah, lovely thing, but not cheap at all. So if you're serious, definitely get one of these. This will cover the vast range of stuff, and you could even use this with headsets with a little bit of jiggling and poking. You could probably get it to work, but if you're going to be doing headsets more regularly, you do need a proper headset press. And if you're going to be doing bottom brackets more regularly, a dedicated bottom bracket press is probably a better idea than one of these, because these are beautiful soft aluminium presses here, and then these are actually made of steel, and they've got good weight to them, and they're very durable. So yeah, lovely tool, this one there. So following on from the socket set section, we're now going to look at the sort of tools that you may also use with your socket set, and these are all bottom bracket removal tools, basically, or tools that you will need if you're working on your bottom bracket or somebody else's bottom bracket. I think for the home mechanic, what you want to do is focus specifically on the bottom bracket that you use and the crank system that you use. You don't need to buy all of these. It's not really necessary to go out and purchase like a set of stuff where you're going to get all the bottom bracket systems in one big box or something, because the likelihood that you'll ever use them all is tiny. Even for me, working in a bike shop in a small country, I haven't even used all of the bottom bracket tools that I own. As I said in a previous section, I don't even use these. So like I say, just focus on what you have. And I think for most people, it's going to be Shimano, and for most people, it's going to be BB86 or a press fit or British Standard threaded, for example. So for the press fit stuff, the kind of removal tools that most people are using are these, and basically this is actually for a headset, but sometimes I can use it for bottom brackets. Let's see now, this one's here we are. So this one is a Park Tools one, I believe. It's not got a number on it at the moment, but this is the kind of tool that you need for removing BB86 press fit from a bike, knocking it out, the plastic ones that generally Shimano produce. You basically slide this into the aperture of the bottom bracket, or the opening of the bottom bracket, and then hammer it out via this butt end here, pushing the bottom bracket out, turning it slowly as you do that. This one also is for bottom bracket removal. This is a Lifeline one, slightly bigger size for slightly different bearings. But as I say, I tend to use these quite a lot, especially when the bottom bracket is already toast and it needs replacing. Then these are absolutely fine. It doesn't matter if you damage anything with regards to the bottom bracket, not the shell, but the bottom bracket itself, because you're going to replace it anyway. So that kind of knocking stick method is absolutely fine. Let me think now. So for the BSA stuff, I have this one, which I've had for a long time. This is a Lenzine tool. So this is for British Standard bottom brackets, and this also comes with a cassette removal tool on the other side, which I don't use very often, but actually it's nice for doing stuff by hand because it's got a good grip to it. It's nice for, I like this because I can thread it on first and start turning the bottom bracket gently with my hands to make sure that nothing's cross-threaded, and then I can get the adjustable spanner on it and open things up. So I do like this tool, and although it's not really a professional mechanics tool, it's very well built, and it's come in extremely handy for me, and I've never felt the need to replace it with anything fancier like a Park Tools one or a BBB one. So as I say, I bought mine sort of individually over time, and I just bought them when I needed them. Sometimes when someone came in my shop with a problem and I didn't have that tool, I went out, looked for it online and bought it, because then it became necessary to do that if they were a returning customer. This one I bought recently. This is one of my most recent purchases, and it's a BBT1. So this is basically like a China brand product, and it's aluminium construction, so it's a little bit soft, But what's clever about it is it comes with a huge variety of bottom bracket sizings on it as one unit, as you can see, look. So inside here we've got 3 cuttings there, and inside here we've got 2 cuttings here. So you just use the set of teeth that corresponds with the bottom bracket that you're trying to remove. It's got a nice gnarled grip on the outside. I bought this for the was it the BB86 386 Evo, I think it was? Oh no, I bought it for the SRAM Dub because I didn't have a Dub bottom bracket remover. And it also came with the Evo as well, which is kind of useful. So I was like, yeah, I'll buy one of these. And I've used it a few times now. I think I've used it about 3 or 4 times, and it's been really good. And the other nice thing about it is, as I say, it fits nicely onto a socket. This is a perfect tool for a home mechanic. It really is, because you're not going to be doing stuff very often. So you don't need super durable tools. This one is not super durable, as you can see. It's already starting to wear when it slips, for example, which it occasionally does, because the teeth are very shallow on this. If you do slip, you're more likely to do damage to the tool than the bottom bracket, to be honest with you. But it is a perfect home mechanic tool because it comes with such a complement of sizings to it. So that is good, and it's cheap as well. If you're willing to wait the months and months and months it takes to arrive, it's actually a pretty good tool to have. So yeah, I recommend one of those for the home mechanic. For a professional mechanic, it is probably better if you're working in a more populated country than myself. It's probably better that you buy the individual tool from a decent manufacturer than this, but this will get you by. If your bottom bracket, for example, is something like BB30, then one of these is always handy. This is another part tool thing, but it also requires basically hitting bearings out for BB30. This one over here is quite an old and pretty famous bicycle tool. This is a crank arm puller for the old-fashioned style square taper cranks. I use this fairly often actually, because there are so many bikes out there still using the old square taper system, and a lot of cheaper bikes as well use the square taper system. Nothing wrong with the square taper system actually. The bottom brackets, they tend to be the smoothest and best running bottom brackets out there, really. So something like that, a crank arm puller is pretty essential. If you're working with Shimano stuff, which is probably the case, then you're going to need one of these, which is the little tool for removing the plastic nut on the Shimano cranks. So 105 Ultegra, Dura Ace, whatever it might be, requires one of these. It's a relatively cheap and inexpensive tool. You get it in a lot of bike sets. I have a couple of these now, different ones. This one requires you to use your fingers to get it open. I have one with an Allen key slot in the back, which is nice because sometimes people really over tighten these and they don't want to open it. You physically can't get enough force with your fingers to open it. So having one with an Allen key slot in the back is actually a really good idea. This one came free, not free, but it came with a set of tools. And then I bought the other one with the Allen key hole in the back after that. There are various adapters for different Shimano standards that you can pick up. This one is for a Paraxis bottom bracket. It's very specific, their M30 BB tool. This one I do use every now and again because a lot of specialized bikes came with Paraxis bottom brackets. It was a very expensive tool to buy, but it was necessary at the time, and again fits with the socket set. And then there are other various bottom bracket tools like these. These are kind of like bottom bracket spanners. This one, for example, is exactly the same size as this one. I use this one for holding the other side in place sometimes when it's a bottom bracket that screws into itself, and then I use this to undo it. So that's the only time I'd really recommend you buy one of these, if you have to hold it on both sides. Generally speaking, this is a better tool. I don't like to open things with this because it tends to do more damage, and you've also got less surface area gripping the bottom bracket. So if you can, buy something like this that completely envelops it, and it's also more stable because this butts up against the edge of the bottom bracket, so it rocks around less. This is quite unstable, so I only use this for holding things in place while I undo them. So yeah, bottom bracket tools. It's difficult to say which ones you should get first, but I think the only thing you can do really is just monitor what kind of stuff is coming in your shop what kind of stuff most people own, and it's probably going to end up being mostly Shimano, BB86, BSA threaded are probably going to be the two most popular, followed by BB30 or PF30 so stuff, and that's what you really probably should concentrate on first. Home mechanic, just pick the stuff that you have. If you have Campag group set, then buy Campag bottom bracket removers. If you have Shimano, then buy the Shimano. So, just concentrate, don't go crazy. You will regret it if you buy a load of stuff that you don't need, and a lot of these things are very expensive and just unnecessary as well. So there you go. And if you're doing stuff for your friends, you can always ask them to help chip in and say, look, we'll go 50-50 on the bottom bracket or something. And then you can, like say, set up your little home mechanic station and have the right bottom brackets that you need for that particular job. Right, that was a very long section. If I've missed anything or if anything's not clear, stick it in the comments below and I'll try and answer it, because I'm getting through so many tools and there are so many variables. I'm going to miss a lot of stuff, and this is only a small proportion of the potential bottom brackets that are out there on the market. There are many more than this, and we could be here all day discussing bottom brackets, to be honest with you. But there you go. Like I say, home mechanic, just focus on the stuff that you've got personally, and a small bike shop mechanic, just start with the stuff that most regularly comes through your door, because you obviously need to make money. There's no point in buying some random bottom bracket tool that possibly might ever get used if it costs you $60. Right, moving on. So you're probably going to need yourself a drill if you're really serious about your bicycle building and maintenance, or if you're running a small business, you probably do need something like this. This one obviously I use for both home and work because it does both jobs. It's just a little battery operated drill, but it's more than good enough for drilling out the heads of screws and stuff that get stuck in bike frames. When heads get rounded off bolts and stuff and you need to drill them out, then this is what I turn to. I also use this for like sanding stuff and things with sanding wheels. It fills a variety of roles. I've had it for 6 years or so, and it's been great, to be honest with you. It's been really good. I come from a family that are a bit snobbish about electrical products and brands, and my father always used to have Hilti stuff, which I have a Hilti drill. I love it. So he doesn't consider Bosch to be a very good brand, and so I was sort of dubious about buying one, but actually this Bosch professional drill has been absolutely fantastic, and although it wasn't that expensive, it's lasted a really good long time, and I've put this through the paces, I can tell you that. I've definitely used this to degrees that it shouldn't have been used for, and it's still going strong. So there you go. Get yourself a little drill. Here is another sort of more professional bicycle tool. This is for putting the crown races on steerer tubes. It is not something you need to buy if you're a home mechanic. It's probably a job you will never have to do. Again, it's something you can just take the bike to the bike shop and get them to do it. It's really not worth investing in this tool. However, if you do find that you do need to do this job, something that you can substitute for one of these is a piece of PVC pipe. If you get a piece of PVC pipe that measures the same diameter as the crown race on your steerer tube, you can use that a few times actually for hammering down the crown race, because the PVC pipe, it's soft, it will eventually break, but it will get the crown race on. And I have used that in the past before. I didn't have one of these, I just had a piece of thick PVC pipe that I used. So there are a way around these tools, but if you're building bikes regularly, especially like me, from scratch, or you're doing this professionally, then yes, you do need a decent set of crown race installation tools like this one. I have used this quite regularly for building the Lightspeed frames up, Bowman frames, all sorts of stuff. So there you go. You will need something to mount the forks on before you hit it with this. You can get stuff that fit into your vise, but what I like to do is put a plastic fork holder in the bottom and then place it on a piece of wood or a rag or something on the floor, just to stabilize the fork before I give it a good whacking. I have seen people do it in their hands, like just slide on the tube, hold the fork in the hand and then beat it with the hammer. But I find that the fork sort of moves around everywhere in the crown race, doesn't go on nice and straight. One good hard whack when it's stable seems to be the job. Along with your sandpaper, you're also going to need some metal files, big ones and small ones. These are needle files, and these are engineering files and big large metal files. Having a variety of different shapes is always useful. They come in handy for cleaning everything from brake pads to filing off the ends of cut steerer tubes and stuff, especially the one with the oval side to it, or the circular side to it. I find particularly useful for those kind of jobs. All sorts of stuff. I mean, the kind of jobs that you will need to use these on is endless. If you are a serious mechanic, bike mechanic, you're going to need a set of these. Home mechanic, probably not as much. You can probably get away with just sandpaper. In fact, I would recommend sandpaper more if you're cutting carbon steerers or trying to polish off carbon parts. Not metal files. I know some people do use metal files on carbon parts, and I would never recommend that. I always use sandpaper, very fine sandpaper on carbon parts. But I'm talking about metal working stuff. You will need these files. So there you go. For the home mechanic who's doing simple jobs, probably not necessary. For everybody else, yes, definitely get a decent set of both needle and standard files. Right, this is steerer tube and seat post cutting tools. This is really invaluable, this one. I mean, I couldn't pretty much live without this tool. This is a Part Tools one. What is it? A SG6, I think it is. This is phenomenally useful for steerer tube cutting and seat post cutting, for getting a nice clean and square cut. It just holds the piece in position. It's worth the money if you're going to do this a lot. If you're going to build a lot of bikes, you need to cut a lot of steerer tubes. I cut a lot of my seat posts as well, because I don't like the excess material inside the frame if I'm not using it. So what you do when you cut a seat post is you measure the recommended minimum depth, and then you just move that up. So you always have the recommended minimum insertion depth on your seat post when you're using it, but you can adjust that depending on how much material you actually need. So again, for the basic home mechanic, this is not a requirement. You don't need one of these. You're probably not ever going to cut your steerer tube. It's just easier to take it to a bike shop and get it done. As long as it's a good bike shop and they do a nice job, it's worth the money. Otherwise, you're just going to be having this hanging around your house doing absolutely nothing other than gathering dust. However, if you intend to build multiple bicycles, 3, 4, 5 bikes in your life, then it's probably worth the investment. And then you can even loan it out to your friends as well. And then the simple saw. This is the kind of saw you need for most jobs with the bike. This will cut through pretty much everything. I use this to cut up the hyper wheels in one of my previous videos. Steerer tube cutting, the seat post cutting. You'll need different blades for metal and carbon. Minimum TPI, which is threads per, teeth per inch. I'm thinking of tires there, threads per inch, is 32 TPI. Okay, so that is minimum for cutting through carbon fiber. If you can get something smaller than that, or if you can get the specific carbon fiber cutting blades, which usually use like an abrasive material rather than an actual bunch of teeth, then that is good. For metal, you can use something with a bit less TPI, so you get a faster cut, because these small teeth, they get clogged a lot faster with things like aluminium. Replace your blades. Remember to replace your blades. I replace my blades very often. Carbon fiber, although it is very soft and easy to cut, it does dull your blades quite quickly. And the last thing you want to do is cut somebody's head tube or steerer tube, steerer tube or seat post with a blunt blade, because you'll get loads of fraying on the carbon fiber afterwards that then you will have a bit of a job cleaning up. So you want a nice clean cut, and you want to finish it off with a bit of sandpaper and some nail varnish, just to prevent anything from fraying on the ends. Here we have a bearing puller set. This, I think they call this a blind hole bearing puller. I got this one from a Japanese company. It's pretty good actually. Not too expensive, but it's also not too cheap as well. And it comes with a variety of different sizes for pulling all sorts of different bearings. I predominantly use this for pulling wheel bearings out of wheels. And I think it is this form of bearing puller is the best one for minimizing damage to the hub, because if you use it correctly, of course. I find the ones that use the slide hammers, they're quicker, but the slide hammer bearing pullers, potentially they pull the bearings out at funny angles. And pulling the bearing out at a funny angle like that can result in stretching the material of the hub or gouging the material of the hub. And then when you install a new bearing, it doesn't fit quite as nicely. So, you know, it causes damage over time. So my preference is for one of these, because this thing pulls bearings out nice and evenly, nice and level. And it does it incrementally, slowly, and you can get a lot of force on this one as well. So I like this style of bearing puller. Can't remember how much it was. I'm going to guess it's in the hundreds of dollars range, probably like 120, 150, something like that. It is a more professional bicycle tool unless you are going to be doing some serious servicing on your bicycle wheels. You do not need this. If you are, then I recommend this type of bearing puller. It is a bit slower than the, as I say, the slide hammer type of bearing puller, but it is safer in my opinion, and it does a better job overall. You are also going to need, if you are more of an advanced mechanic, you're going to need a set of tap and dies. I use these tap and dies very often, especially the 5mm, the 4mm and the 3mm for bicycle jobs. I don't think I've ever used the 8, 10 or 12mm for bike related jobs. I've only used those for other things. But these are super useful. And these are actually quite nice sets. They've got 3 taps for each sizing for the plug, you know, and it's good to have a variety of different ones for different jobs when you're chasing threads or when you're putting in brand new threads into stuff you've repaired. I tend to use the taps more than the dies, but we have used the dies in the past for doing things like repairing and adapting quick releases, which is quite an interesting job. And then these ones are actually the pedal taps. So these are specific because obviously with the pedal axles, they go in, one of them goes in reverse. So having a set of pedal taps is also pretty useful for left and right. I think this one actually says what it is. Yeah, this one says left and this one should say right. So again, very advanced tools, not something your everyday home mechanic needs, but if you are a proper bike shop mechanic or somebody who intends to repair a lot of old bicycles, then you definitely going to need a set of tap and dies. Wonderful. I really like this set as well because it's blue. So this is my hydraulic disc brake tools or bleed kits. I've got one for Shimano and then I use this one for SRAM. This one's fairly new. It hasn't had much use yet, but this one I've used fairly regularly for all the Shimano stuff. You can buy them in kits like this or kits like this. There are a lot of cheap online versions now that I wasn't able to get at the time, but now I would probably favor over the standard Shimano kits because I think they're better. Like the AliExpress type kits have got more adapters in them and more things in them, so they're actually really good kits. What can I say? Yeah, it's just something you're going to need if you're working with disc brakes for bleeding. For cutting the disc brake housings and things, you can just use a standard knife. As long as you've got a flat surface, you can get a pretty clean cut. You don't need the specific tool yet. I will eventually get myself the specific tool, but at the moment I'm managing by tapping in the heads of the needles, the hydraulic needles with a hammer in a set of blocks. I haven't needed the needle driver yet, and I haven't needed this specific cutter yet, so you can get by with just the crafting knife. Right, that's about it for that. So just a quick look at wheel building tools or truing tools Again, if you're a home mechanic and you're just doing simple bike maintenance on your bike, general maintenance, you don't need to invest in this kind of stuff. If you're doing a lot of bikes, or as I say, running a business, you will need to invest in something like this. I have a variety of stuff. These are relatively inexpensive, cheap Lifeline things from Wiggle. This one is a proper Part Tools one. This is from BBB. So these are all spoke keys and spoke spanners, spoke tools for various different types of spoke nipples. This is a spoke tensioning tool. So this one is telling me what the tension of the spokes are. There is charts that come with this that allow me to translate these numbers into actual real world tensions. And the dishing tool, which is if you're building wheels or you're checking the position of wheels, is quite useful as well. And all of this stuff requires something else, which I'll just show you now. This thing, which is a wheel truing stand. This is probably the last thing you need to buy, quite frankly. This is not a particularly advanced one. It's a relatively cheap one, but it was still hundreds of dollars. And it was a lot in shipping as well. But if you're going to be building wheels, you've just got to have one. It's as simple as that. And it fills a variety of roles. Again, for a professional or someone running a small bike business, you just got to have one of these. I'd love a more expensive one. I'd love one with the little mechanical gauges on it and things like that, but for the kind of stuff that I'm doing, I don't need it. I can do everything by eye. And I'm getting pretty good at truing wheels now after all these years. I can get it so finely tuned now, most wheels I can true to such a degree that if I even slip a piece of paper between the wheel and the gauge here, the wheel will stop spinning because it's that fine. So we're talking, thousands of an inch. It's a great tool. It's very, very handy and very, very useful if you are going to be building wheels on a regular basis and stuff like that. So, but again, basic home mechanic, definitely don't need this. Well guys, you made it all the way to the end. Congratulations and thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope it was fun and interesting and you learned something new. So now you can go away and start gathering up your tools and hopefully setting to work on fixing your bike. And I really hope this video was in some way useful to you on that journey. Again, if you've got any questions, something that I haven't covered in this part 2 or part 1, or you've got any comments or anything at all, just stick it in the comments below and we'll try and sort that out between you and I. Obviously, please do like and subscribe to the channel, really helps, and we'd love to grow the channel bigger and so we can answer more questions and do more interesting videos and stuff like this. And yeah, click that notification bell as well, just in case you haven't, so YouTube lets you know when I post another video, so you don't miss things like part 1 or part 2 videos. Right, if all else being said, I think that's about a wrap for today. Thank you again, and as always guys, when you're out riding, stay safe. Bye.